let me know when everybody is ready. It's good? Good. And we got one more. Good to go? Thank you all for being here today for this very, very important public safety announcement. On June 2nd, I asked Chief Ben Raymond to step down as Chief of Police of the Shreveport Police Department, and that process went into motion. I afforded him some time to finish up some critical law enforcement training that he needed to finish up and prepare the department for transition. And Chief Raymond also requested leave, which I approved, that will begin at the end of August and will go into November, and he'll return to the Shreveport Police Department in the rank of sergeant. At this time, I'd like to thank Chief Ben Raymond for his decades of service to the city of Shreveport and his tireless work that he's put in. Whether it was an early morning and I called him at 5 o'clock, or I had a late night and I called him at 2 o'clock to check on the status of the department or to check on the status of a crime committed in our city, he picked up the phone, and I'm grateful for that. The safety of each and every citizen that calls Shreveport home has been my #1 priority since I took the oath of office as mayor. We are experiencing an inexcusable surge of violent crime in this particular moment. And my #1 priority is focusing on the future and making sure that each and every citizen of Shreveport is as safe as possible. And the police department needs change. This is not a decision that I've come upon lightly, but at this time I'd like to announce the substitute appointment for the Chief of Police will be Assistant Chief Wayne Smith. Assistant Chief Smith comes with 40 years of law enforcement experience and over 2 decades of command level experience. He's not just a placeholder, he's a leader, and we're excited about his leadership. At this time, I'll have Chief Raymond come up and make a few remarks, and he will be followed by Assistant Chief Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I do have some prepared comments I'd like to read. Bear with me. I appreciate the opportunity which was given to me nearly 3 years ago to lead the Shreveport Police Department. To say it has been a difficult road would no doubt be an understatement. My first full year as Chief of Police saw drastic reductions in crime to include both property and violent crimes. Then in 2020, we encountered a pandemic unlike any our nation has experienced in decades. In addition to the numerous responsibilities we faced on a daily basis, we had to deal with a new series of concerns regarding the spread of a deadly virus and the devastating impact it was having on our citizens, businesses, and economy as a whole. A reduction in qualified applicants and an increase in resignations and retirements began to negatively impact our ability to respond to calls for service and perform proactive enforcement aimed at reducing crime. Within weeks of the pandemic, law enforcement at a national level was thrust into the limelight due to a high-profile use of force incident. Soon thereafter, our agency had to deal with similar issues, calls for police reform, and weeks of protests. We worked closely with citizens to ensure their rights to the freedom of speech and freedom to peacefully assemble were supported and protected. At the same time, clear ground rules were set whereby violence and destruction of property would not be tolerated. The Shreveport Police Department's response to the public concerns during this time is to be commended. We did not see the violence and destruction that plagued many cities facing similar societal issues. Spikes in violent crime were the next order of events, and once again, Shreveport was not spared. Many cities in our nation saw historical increases in homicides and shootings. Combined with a shortage of public safety personnel and anti-law enforcement sentiment, violent crime has become a national crisis. Unfortunately, law enforcement as a whole, and law enforcement leaders in particular, have been blamed for these problems. Recently, legislation was introduced calling for a vote of no confidence in my leadership. To blame me as Chief of Police for the violent offenders roaming our streets is ludicrous. We do not blame the fire chief for businesses or houses which burn to the ground, not even those in horrific incidents in which lives are lost. We do not blame the Department of Transportation, Public Works, or Traffic Engineering when there's a fatality accident. The doctors and staff of our local hospitals are not being blamed for hundreds of lives being lost to COVID-19. Yet the response from some of our elected representatives is to blame those who are working tirelessly to solve and prevent violent crime in our city. As police officers, we will continue to arrest violent offenders, often multiple times, until the true problems within the criminal justice system are addressed. Individually, I will continue to do my part as a public safety professional who has dedicated his entire adult life to protecting the citizens of Shreveport. I can only hope the next Chief of Police, Assistant Chief Smith, will get the cooperation and support he or she deserves. When I accepted the position to lead this department, I knew this day would come. When the mayor asked if I would step down as Chief of Police several weeks ago, there were a lot of emotions which took time to process. Ultimately, I feel the decision to step down is in the best interest of the department, and I know this is God's will for my life. I am not, however, ready to turn in my badge, and I still have a desire and the ability to serve. I have requested a voluntary demotion to the rank of sergeant, the rank I held prior to accepting the competitive appointment to Chief Administrative Assistant in 2017, and ultimately the Chief of Police in 2018. I have a strong faith in God and trust in the path He has prepared before me. I look forward to serving in a new capacity and starting the next chapter of my career. May God bless and protect all of you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great honor and a privilege to stand here today to accept this great responsibility. I proudly accept the opportunity to work and lead a team whose primary mission is to provide for safety and the well-being of our wonderful community. Thank you, God Almighty, for this privilege to serve. My care, my concern for this community is unwavering and unconditional. Thank you, Mayor Perkins, C.L. Whitehorn, for the confidence in my leadership ability. I promise to lead this organization with a team effort in a direction that will ensure positive results in reducing the crimes and fears of our community. Thank you, Chief Ben Raymond, for your years of dedicated service and leadership. I'm proud to serve with you. To the City Council members and all those who are in elected positions, who are elected to serve, I pray for your support and confidence as we move forward to serve and protect our community against the evils of lawlessness. I promise to work tirelessly and with a great need for urgency toward peace and safety throughout our entire community by ensuring that the Shreveport Police Department delivers the best quality of law enforcement services possible. I will foster an atmosphere of good communication that seeks your invaluable wisdom and insight. I truly believe that all of us working together in concert with our neighborhoods can address our community needs. I'm committed to serving with pride, integrity, transparency, and compassion. I ask for your confidence and support as we work together to reduce the violent crimes and the fears of becoming victims of crimes in our community. Together with the community, we will embark on a mission that's going to include greater police presence in our neighborhoods and areas that are greater at risk for violent crimes occurring. Enhanced partnerships with other agencies to bring additional presence and enforcement to our communities. Enhanced community policing efforts to strengthen our relationships, the relationships between the police officers and the neighborhoods in which they patrol. Enhanced recruitment efforts. We will intensify and expand our efforts to recruit, train, and retain only the best candidates possible. We will never sacrifice quantity for quality. Great accountability at all levels of operation. And to my fellow police officers, I'm proud to serve the citizens of this city along with you. Much is going to be required of us, but together we will rise to the occasion. Thank you, Mayor Perkins. I will begin this process by leading from the front today. Thank you.
We'll take questions.
Antoine White and Marcus Mitchell, I forget exactly their current titles, will they stay in those positions?
As of now, yes.
Mayor, why did you ask the chief to resign?
Yeah, well, I pointed that out in my speech.
But didn't seem that clear. If
I know.
The work that he had done, why suddenly out of the blue ask him to resign?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to reiterate some points. We have been experiencing an inexcusable surge of crime, not squarely placing that on the chief's shoulders whatsoever. Our department, is not a secret, has been suffering from some morale problems as well. And just ultimately, we needed to make a change. That is my responsibility as mayor for the city of Shreveport, and that's the reason why I asked Chief to step down.
So philosophically, what do you think can be done? Obviously, we're on record pace for homicides in Shreveport this year. What do you think can be done or changed within the culture of the police department in order to try to stop these homicides?
I think Chief Smith just highlighted a lot within his speech on things that can be done. Making sure that we intensify recruiting efforts so that we can fill those gaps that we have, being over 100 officers down at this time. Again, raising the morale of the police department as well. And sometimes change is the impetus for those things. So this change is necessary for us to get on a different path so that we can do the best that we can. We're always trying to do the best that we can in this department.
He mentioned quality over quantity, but Shreveport still pays, I think, about $34,000 a year to start. Is that enough for a starting police officer?
Well, in talking about salaries, you know, I have to bring in the city council on that particular discussion. We're at the behest of them. They control the purse. We look to be working with them on what we can compensate our police officers with. But as Chief Smith pointed out, that is going to be a topic of discussion moving forward as well.
Speaking of city council, was the council aware that you had asked Chief Raymond to step down?
You asked that question, and I have a city council member here, and I'd like him to make some remarks as well so that he can address that.
Thank you, Mayor Perkins.
So he's going to answer my question then?
Yeah, and I'll add to it if he...
I will make some remarks and then I'll address your question. Good afternoon. I'm here today to express my deep appreciation to Chief Ben Raymond for his decades of faithful service to the city of Shreveport. As you all may or may not know, Chief Raymond is a summa cum laude graduate of Northeast Louisiana University and completed his training at the Shreveport Police Academy more than 21 years ago. He was assigned to the police department's street-level interdiction unit and special response team, and in those roles repeatedly risked his life apprehending armed drug traffickers and other dangerous criminals. Chief Raymond later served as training coordinator for the special response team and as an instructor at the Shreveport Police Academy. He also served as the police department's chief administrative assistant, and in November 2018 he was appointed interim chief of police by former Mayor Tyler. In 2019, Mayor Perkins nominated him to serve as permanent chief of police, and I and my colleagues on the city council unanimously confirmed his nomination. As Chief Raymond mentioned in his remarks, during his first full year as police chief, our city experienced a 28% reduction in homicides and the lowest Part 1 crimes in almost half a century. That downward crime trend continued until COVID hit in March 2020. The police department was forced to end roll calls, two-man patrol units, neighborhood walks, and other activities that could spread the virus. To conserve resources, the police department was also directed to take all possible steps to save money. So Chief Raymond ended hirebacks and special operations and temporarily assigned entire units to patrol duties. I am confident as a member of the City Council that Chief Raymond did all he could with the resources he had. We are all profoundly concerned about the wave of violent crime that has washed over our city and other cities across the country in the past 18 months. But the factors swelling that wave are not within the control of Chief Raymond or any other chief of police. He does not pull the triggers of the guns that kill our people. Criminals do. nor is he responsible for this city's chronic underfunding of its police department. The city's elected leadership is. And he likewise has no power over a local criminal justice system that routinely fails to appropriately punish armed felons and other violent criminals. The bench and bar bear that responsibility. Chief Raymond is a good man and an exceptional police officer who has spent his entire adult life serving and protecting our city, and for that he is entitled to every elected official's and every citizen's enduring respect and gratitude. On behalf of the tens of thousands of citizens I represent, I thank him sincerely for his service, and I hope the entire city will do the same. Thank you. To your question, ma'am, I was not aware at the time that the mayor had asked Chief Raymond to resign. I have learned in recent weeks that was in the works.
All right, that was the last question. Thank you all for joining us for this public safety